A quick thank you to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Data Magnet, Cat Crab Lobster, Duck Machine, Try Again 95, Astray the Dreamer, Mezek, Budic Joel, German Chemist, Casper Arnholtz, and Chaos to Mist. Thank you very much. Anyways, on to the story. The Care and Feeding of Humans, Part 11. Humans seem impervious to the emotion of fear, at least for themselves. When faced with a situation that would cause other species to turn and run to safety, the humans play music. If they don't have mechanical methods to play music, they will sing or whistle. They call this whistling in the graveyard, or whistling in the dark. This trait seems to serve no survival purpose at all. Dweck, Review of Ontological Species Studies, The Care and Feeding of Humans, Where Words Fail, Music Speaks, published by Glass and Steel. The Care and Feeding of Humans. Zoe sent one of the droids in the direction to the tree lurker. It flew away long before the droid got close enough to get any good images. Well, Narif said, that's a good sign, isn't it? We probably won't be attacked by a shy flying thing that'll leave when you get the droid too close. Obviously, you've never heard of magpies or mockingbirds during mating or nesting seasons, Nate said. And if hummingbirds were the size of crows, the human race would have been killed off a long time ago, Alan added. Those little suckers are mean. I pulled camera data from our scout droid. I think there's a clearing ahead. We should probably make camp there, Zoe said. She tapped her combat and the possible camp spot appeared on all their maps. It will probably be another hour before we can get there, she added, looking at Narif. Will you be okay? Oh, sure. Narif stood up to demonstrate that she could walk for another hour. Another hour. Zoe looked at the boys. How about you two? Are you up for it? Of course, Narif said, waving his hands in the air. We're full of energy, see? He bounced up and down a little. Once they hit the clearing, Alan set the droids up to monitor the perimeter of the clearing, calling back the droid that had been the scout droid. Narif and Querif started popping up a tent, laying out the energy nodes in a roughly circular pattern that took up most of the clearing. You know, Querif said as he laid out 3 more energy nodes, it would only take a failure of one of these nodes to take the whole tent down. Let's hope that doesn't happen, then, Narif said. Or better idea, said Zoe, who was setting out a smaller concentric circles of energy nodes. Let's use a backup tent inside the main tent. There's no protocol for having an energy field in an energy field, Querif said. That's because they didn't have Zoe write the protocols, Nate said. He was standing in the middle of the circle, turning slowly and keeping an eye on the combat strapped to his arm, as well as scanning the trees for signs of a threat. He held up his weapon easily, and he looked ready for anything that might attack. They were fools. Zoe smiled at the ground as she laid out more nodes. Why, Nate, I didn't know you cared. I care about keeping my skin intact. I care about keeping everyone's skin intact. That's why I agreed you should be the boss, Nate said, a small smile on his lips. Once the nodes were laid out, Zoe called everyone into the center of the clearing. She touched her combat and a soft blue light played up around them, creating an upside-down ball of light. Then she tapped a couple more times, and a light green light emerged from the slightly smaller ring, and they were suddenly standing in the middle of 2 circles of light. The color shifted and danced in greens and blues, and Narif was suddenly homesick for summer nights under the water. That's cool, Alan said. It reminds me of the Aurora Borealis. It's basically the same concept, Zoe said. Only the Aurora Borealis is electrons banging against our magnetic field, and this is electrons banging against everything. You have something like this on Earth? Tarif asked, his voice quiet. Near the top and the bottom, yeah. You could live your whole life on Earth and never see it, Talon said, if you live in the wrong place, anyway. As the sun dropped lower, Tarif started making dinner. Nate set up a light in the middle of the circle. What's that for? Zoe asked. It's a campfire. You can't have a camp out without a campfire. You can't have a real fire in an energy tent, and we wouldn't set up a source of light outside the tent where it might draw. Nate hesitated and substituted a new word for whatever he had been about to say. Attention, so, Nate bent over and touched the switch on the right, which changed the glow from a steady light to a flickering light. Ta-da! Instant campfire. If only we could toast marshmallows, this would be perfect, Alan said. Tarif pulled a bag out and handed it to Alan. Really? Marshmallows, Tariff. You're awesome! I thought these weren't available on ships with Krell because they have a problem with one of the ingredients. It's the vanilla extract, Tariff said. However, I was able to convince the shuttle that since none of us are Krell, marshmallows can be on the shuttle. We just have to make sure we eat them all before we go back to the ship. Such a hardship, Alan sighed. He set the bag aside until after dinner with a little pat. Dinner was good stew with some hearty bread, but a few bites into her dinner, Zoe said hers and stood up. The scout droid should have returned by now, Zoe said, looking out in the deepened dark. She pulled her compat and started some impressive swearing. Nerif pulled out her compat and a quick glance showed everyone else was putting up the info on the scout droid too. The lights that marked the path had stopped moving. Putting the camera for the droid view showed a still image of a sideways view of the forest, the last frame of whatever the droid had filmed before stopping. Nerif backed the camera up a bit and saw only a long shadow fall in front of the droid. Then the image bucked and flipped. The droid had the capability to right itself, in case it fell over or was knocked over in some way, but it looked like the camera didn't move at all, once the droid had been flipped. Nate, Alan, you stay here with the Riffs. I'll head out and find out what happened to the droid. If I don't make it back by sunrise, I want you to take them back to the shuttle and then use your best judgment to come and find me, or leave the planet, Zoe said. She was strapping back on the weapon, taken off for dinner. Aren't you supposed to say, hold my beer? Dareth asked. Zoe had her foot up on the chair so that she could strap the holster onto her leg, but she stopped and looked up. What? The book said that when humans are about to do something really stupid, they're supposed to say, hold my beer. So I ask you again, if you're going to do something this stupid, aren't you supposed to say, hold my beer? Dareth said, and lifted up her chin a little at the end, heading off into a strange forest on a strange world in the middle of the night. It's barely dark, Zoe pointed out. In the dark, Dareth continued, when who knows what has killed our droid. A machine, I'll point out, that is built to take a lot of punishment. Does that seem like a smart idea to you? Zoe put her foot back down on the ground. It's possible that it's not the best idea I've had today, she admitted. Okay, let's spend the night here. Tomorrow we'll find the droid together and decide what to do from there, Dareth said. How about we wait until morning and then we'll make decisions from there, Zoe said. But tonight I don't think that we should rely on the droids alone to keep watch. 3 shifts. I'll take the middle shift. Who wants first shift? After some sorting around, Alan and Quirrell got first shift, Nerif and Zoe got middle shift, and Nate and Tariff got the early morning shift. Because, as Darren pointed out, he was getting up early to make breakfast anyway. Tariff picked up a bag of marshmallows off the ground. Alan had dropped them when the kerfuffle about the scout droid had started. He did want to try roasted marshmallows. Maybe tomorrow. Nerif pulled out a compad and let the ship know what was going on. The signal dropped a few times, but she was able to confirm with the ship that the droid had been unexpectedly decommissioned, as they put it. Zoe was already asleep, and Alan and Quirrell were playing a game of cards. It looked like a game of catch and snuff, but Alan was insisting it was called Go Fish. Nerif woke up a few hours later to a low moaning sound. She sat up and saw Zoe, Nate, and Alan standing by the campfire light. Someone had switched it back from flickering to a low but steady light. Quirrell waved at Nerif, and Nerif walked over to the group. What's that noise? What's going on? Nerif asked. We think it's some sort of electrical storm, Nate said. Look at the lights. He gestured up to the lights of the tent, and Nerif saw that they were stronger and moving faster than they had been when the tents were first set up. I thought this planet didn't have any storms, Nerif said slowly. Oh no, it has storms, Nate said, but a little bitterness in his voice. It just hasn't had any storms for 9 freaking months, and the night we land on this planet, the mother of storms decides to hit. And here Nate raised his voice to a shout, because the universe freaking hates me that much. Tara finally woke up when Nate started yelling. Alan pulled Nate aside. It's just a storm. Earth has worse storms than this every day. No big deal. Yeah, Nate sighed. You're right. No big deal. 'Cause humans, they're badasses of the universe, Alan said with a smile, though in a voice soft enough that Zoe wouldn't be likely to overhear. We have incredibly strong acid and we can just carry around in our guts, Nate replied back, equally softly. And we burn ourselves with radiation as a mating ritual, Alan returned. Well, not you, Alan, Zoe said, proving that her hearing was better than either Nate or Alan had expected. Anyway, I doubt you ever done more than 50 minutes on a sun tanning at a time. Nerif realized that even though Zoe had forbidden Nate from talking about the strengths of humans, right now she was using it to diffuse the anger and fear that everyone had been feeding. The humans were, Nerif realized, with a wave of excitement, whistling in the dark. Right then is when the particularly large 90 bolt struck one of the nodes, and the first tent went out. End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope